104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. We now go to the man from the New York Post, the authority on all things New York Knicks. Mr. Mark Berman joins us. Mark, give us a grade A through F after Game 1 so far this season in the New York Knicks.
It's a D. I know it's opening night for the Cavaliers accepting their ring ceremony, but that's sometimes a distraction. And in fact, 2 years ago, LeBron's very first game in Cleveland, the Knicks were the opponent, and the Knicks actually captured that game. So they're already behind the 17-win Knicks of 2 years ago. It was disappointing because I thought so many of the guys that I was so looking forward to seeing just did not play that well. Even Porzingis was off. I thought Rose was over-anxious. He showed flashes. Carmelo, defensively, nobody played well, and they were sloppy. And there were no bright spots, put it that way.
So there's no excuse that you ran into a buzzsaw in a Cavs team that just really wanted this game?
Yeah, no, I know that I think our columnist, Mike Vaccaro, did a nice column in today's Post saying, listen, let's not judge them until home opener Saturday against Memphis. That's a better barometer. But I think this is more of a foreshadow that the Knicks are going to get off to a poor start. Their first 4 games are against playoff teams from last year. And the preseason was kind of a wreck. Derrick Rose misses 16 days because of the trial. Going into training camp, the Knicks weren't sure if he'd miss more than a day. It was kind of a shock that he was gone for so long, and he's definitely rusty, and he doesn't know his teammates, and he doesn't know the triangle. And, he definitely looked over-anxious. But, I don't even think the Cavaliers played all that well. Their big three played well. Smith was like 3 of 13. They got no contributions from anyone else except for their big three, and it was enough against the Knicks, because they didn't get anything from anybody.
You touched on Rose looking rusty out there. Is there a baseline for you with all these new teammates and moving parts that by mid-December, by late November, when should we as Knicks fans and people who watch this team think this is when the team should start clicking and start playing well?
Well, it probably is going to be December. And by then, the Eastern Conference, listen, the Cavaliers are the only great team in the conference. Boston is very good. After that, I think there's a lot of parity, but there's a lot of pretty decent teams. And for them to get into the top 8, to fall behind after a bad November, I think it's going to be, difficult for them. And Derek has to learn his teammates. He played one preseason game against Houston, and the Knicks got blown out of that one also. So I think, I haven't added up the point totals, but I think the Knicks are minus 60 in the 2 games Rose has played. He had 1 assist last night. He held on to the ball. Listen, he got to the basket when he wanted to, but it didn't work out a lot. And, he's got to trust his teammates, and he's talked about how he has all these weapons. Well, he didn't show that he wanted to use his weapons last night. I was disappointed. But, again, he's definitely rusty, but he's got to learn his teammates, and that's what you have training camp for. So now he's going through training camp here at the start of the regular season.
Mark Berman joins us on 104.5 The Team. Follow him on Twitter at NYPost_Berman. All right, Mark, 81 games left. Can we shine this up at anything? Is there anything you saw last night that you're looking back and going, you know what, there's a positive?
All right, the one positive was you could see glimpses of what Carmelo Anthony can be in this offense. He didn't get double-teamed a lot because they had to pay attention to Rose and even Porzingis. So he had his mid-range shot going, again, against single coverage. He didn't shoot well from the three-point line. But I think we're going to see a lot less double teams on Carmelo, except he had 4 turnovers and looked sloppy at times. But defensively, again, another negative that we didn't even talk about. They didn't get back on defense, and they didn't play well defensively in the preseason. Hornacek is not really known as a defensive coach, so that's another concern. But listen, Porzingis had a little bit of an off night, and he did light it up from the three-point line later in the game, so there is a bright spot there. I mean, Porzingis is going to get his act together.
So, Mark, yesterday, Goz and I are having this conversation. Goz, he's a little more down-to-earth than I am. I let my Knicks fandom show a little bit. Goz said maybe the 8th seed. I was hoping the 7th seed. Completely insane. Playoff hopes go away?
Well, that is a huge deal, whether it's the 8th or the 7th seed. Huge. If they're the 8th seed, they get the Cavaliers. So I think a lot of teams are going to, in the playoff race, going to be gunning for that number 7 spot. But listen, in the paper, I picked 41 and 41 and the 8th seed. I still see 7 teams better than them. If Rose stays healthy and starts to really get some chemistry going, another bad issue last night, Courtney Lee, their starting shooting guard. He had a bad preseason, and he was scoreless last night. he looks kind of out of the rhythm of the offense right now. But listen, I think there's enough talent to get to the 8th seed, but, Phil Jackson is going for a lot more. He may have Rose for just 1 year, and if they have a slow start in November, I think, it could be a big struggle.
Mark, you and I both picked the same exact seed and win total, so I feel much more confident in my selection yesterday than I do now. Player under the most pressure, though, Carmelo Anthony, double-digit now seasons in the NBA. This is year 2 for Kristaps Porzingis, and his expectations are higher. The guy on the roster under the most pressure.
I think Carmelo. Listen, Phil has tried to build a roster around Carmelo. He's the only fixture in the Phil Jackson reign, and he stuck with him probably because there was no trade clause. But regardless, he stuck with him. And if Carmelo doesn't win this year, sometimes you just got to point the finger that it's not the guys around him. It's that Carmelo is just not a big enough star to lead a team. And at age 32, he needs a lot of help. And he can't commit those turnovers that he did last night. He's got to be a better defender. Kristaps has his whole career ahead of him. I predicted that maybe this year Kristaps could get into the All-Star game, but maybe I'm rushing things a little bit. But this is all about Carmelo this year. He's got to win now, or his legacy in New York is forever stained.
Mark Berman of the New York Post with Levack and Goz right now on 104.5 The Team. All right, Mark, so I'm hearing there's a little bit of hope through a crack, like a little light coming down, but not a ton of it right now. Is that a pretty fair assessment of what you're seeing with the Knicks as of right now?
Well, I just feel they're going to get off to a start. And, sometimes it's tough to recover. You saw some really good things with Derek. He's obviously explosive. He's getting to the hole at will, and he could, play in the open court. But, the chemistry that needed to be built in the preseason did not happen, and they have to do it on the fly. And, again, a very tough opening schedule. They could go 0-4. I mean, there's the 4 playoff teams, and then they have to go into Chicago to face that game where Rose is going to be perhaps a little over-anxious as he was last night. So I'm afraid that a bad start could set a bad tone, where they have to struggle from behind the rest of the season. But, again, there is a lot of hope offensively. I'm just worried, is this a good enough defensive team?
Mark Berman in the New York Post with us. Mark, what did you think of the Cleveland Cavaliers rings?
What did I think of their ceremony or their actual rings?
The actual rings, because my hope is that by the time the Knicks win, they're just getting like a championship belt because these rings are getting so much bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it was the biggest ring I've ever seen. Dan Gilbert really did a great job. I think he bought 1,000 of them for not only full-time employees but some part-time employees. They're not all ready yet. He really went all out and spent a lot of money. And, luxury tax alone, the guy is going to be spending like $30 million this year. I don't think he gets enough credit for being willing to spend in a small market whatever it takes. And I wonder if LeBron actually appreciates it. They've had bad blood in the past. And I don't know, their embrace during the ceremony was a little forced. It didn't seem genuinely like they really have patched it up all the way. But, yeah, it was an incredible ceremony, and that ring is spectacular.
If he's giving out 1,000 rings, I think he's going to be able to piece together the LeBron relationship. If LeBron's cousin and then brother and then best friend from high school, they're all getting championships. Gilbert's doing whatever it takes to get on LeBron's side for sure.
Oh, without a doubt. But he does have him locked up for a few years. Yeah. I mean, LeBron didn't do that one-year contract this time. He signed him for, I believe, two years guaranteed with a third-year opt-out. But, listen, I think Dan Gilbert has done everything. I know J.R. Smith, that was a tough negotiation, and J.R. didn't look sharp at all last night, probably because of the holdout. But ultimately, Gilbert paid him, close to $15 million a year. And, he's doing what it takes, and his luxury tax bill will show it.
New York Post Mark Berman. Follow him on Twitter at NYPost_Berman. Mark, we appreciate your time, and hopefully next time we talk to you, we have some more positives on that Knicks report card.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me again.